Good afternoon, folks. You are all very welcome to today's session on engaging high-value customer accounts using account-based marketing, and more specifically, how account-based marketing can be used to engage and attract high-value customers and accounts. I want to thank Enterprise Ireland for hosting this event, and in particular to Roisin and Lisa from EI, who have brought us all together here today. My name is Cara Kelly, and I'm the Commercial Director of IMS Marketing. And in recent years, ABM has propelled our clients to realise a huge amount of benefits from choosing this as a lead generation strategy. I'm joined by Seamus Fahy, Managing Director of ICS Medical Devices, and Seamus is going to give us insight into their ABM journey and what it meant for his business in a Q&A at the end of today's session. So very briefly, folks, my background is in strategic marketing and communications, and I specialise in working with small, medium and large Irish and international businesses to foster business growth strategies. And in a world where one size fits all marketing is very much giving way to tailored and targeted approaches, this ethos of ABM is emerging as a very powerful strategy, and it's revolutionising the way that we connect with our most valuable prospects. So today's webinar isn't just about theory, it's very much about practical exploration of ABM's intricacies. It's about sharing insights, strategies, and real-world examples to help you, I suppose, evaluate your lead generation approach. So whether you are new to ABM or looking to refine your existing practices, this webinar, it promises to give you actionable takeaways to enhance your approach. So please do make use of the chat function on Zoom and post any questions that come to mind during the session today. And Seamus and I will do our best to address them in the Q&A a little bit later. I want to briefly introduce IMS Marketing. We are an international full-service marketing partner for B2B companies that are seeking to research, enter and promote their business in export markets. We currently have a 24-team hybrid team working across a number of disciplines, from brand strategy to digital marketing, graphic design, web development, and lots more in between. Our offices are based in Galway, and last October we were acquired by a leading US digital marketing agency called Locomotive Agency, and this has significantly enhanced our global offering to our clients. Today, about 95% of our projects are international in nature. So whether it's clients looking to grow their exports across the globe, Europe, internationally, or whether it's international clients that come to us looking to perhaps crack Europe or further afield. So from new market entry to in-country digital marketing programs, we work with each client in the planning and execution of international marketing strategies to help them grow their business. In terms of an agenda for today's session, we are going to explore what is ABM and how it can benefit your organisation. We will discuss how you might start putting the foundations in place, or perhaps how to kickstart your ABM journey and integrate the ethos that is ABM into your business. A significant element of ABM is personalised content, and that'll become very evident as we go through the day. So we can't really talk about ABM and not bring this vital topic into the mix. And then to bring things full circle, we will take a look at what an integrated ABM campaign might look like in action. And as I mentioned, at the end of the session, we will dedicate time to speak with Seamus Fahy from ICS Medical. And just to briefly introduce ICS, they are an industry-leading catheter technology engineering company, and they've undertaken a very, very successful ABM journey. So delighted to have Seamus here to share his experience and the positive results that he and his team realised from this strategy. Okay, so folks, ABM explained. What is ABM? or account-based marketing, and how can it benefit your business? So at its core, account-based marketing, it's a focused strategy. And it's a focused strategy that aligns sales and marketing efforts to enable us to target specific high-value accounts. So instead of casting a wide net, ABM is more like spearfishing and honing in on the key accounts that have the opportunity to add significant value to our businesses. So a good way to look at ABM is by looking at it from the perspective of its difference to what ABM is compared to traditional marketing. So they're both very different strategies, and they're both used to reach and engage potential customers. And while they share some similarities, they do have distinct objectives and require different approaches. So traditional marketing, it's a broad-based approach that seeks to reach as many people as possible. And it's centered on creating awareness and building a brand rather than targeting specific accounts or individuals. And the goal of traditional marketing is very much to build your brand and generate leads through a wide reach. Whereas ABM, on the other hand, it's a targeted approach that focuses on specific accounts or individuals. And it's a strategic and, I guess, holistic approach that very much aligns sales and marketing teams to engage in a specific set of activities, creating highly personalized content and aligned to highly relevant campaigns that are geared towards driving engagement and building relationships. So typically ABM campaigns would be aimed at decision makers within a company. Could be C-suite executives, very senior people, and they're designed to create a tailored message to suit the specific needs of that potential account or opportunity, not necessarily the general market. Excuse me. And one of the benefits of ABM is very much that it allows us to focus our efforts on the accounts that are most likely to convert into customers first. So rather than spreading our resources thinly across a broad spectrum of potential opportunities, with ABM, we're concentrating our efforts on the accounts that matter most to our business. And this type of strategic targeting, it not only maximizes ROI, but it also ensures that our resources are utilised in the most effective and efficient manner. It's a great tool for customer retention also, or a great strategy, I should say, for customer retention, because by understanding the specific needs and challenges of our key customers, we can proactively address issues and provide tailored solutions so we can cement long-term partnerships. And this, this proactive approach, it not only safeguards existing relationships, but it opens up avenues for upselling and cross-selling opportunities throughout the business. It also allows for better collaboration and alignment between our sales and marketing teams. And by working together to target specific accounts, both teams can ensure that they're working towards the same goal and providing a streamlined, consistent message throughout the entire customer purchase journey. And this also improves the chances of conversion and can lead to a much higher return on investment. Another benefit of ABM is that it allows us, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, it allows us to create highly personalized content. So by focusing on that select group of accounts, we can create campaigns that are tailored to the specific needs and interests of those accounts. Again, allowing for higher engagement and conversion rates since the campaigns are more relevant to the audience that we're targeting. So before you can begin your ABM journey, there are a number of, I suppose, really, really important foundational activities that we must ensure are in place to ensure its successful adoption. And the first thing we need to do is decide what kind of ABM we want to do. Or perhaps the question should be, what kind of ABM best suits your business model? And this, I suppose, is the beauty of ABM. In many ways similar to Agile. It isn't a one fits all strategy where you either do it a particular way or you don't do it at all. There are varying levels of personalization that we can implement or that you can implement depending on the resources of your company and the needs of your target customers. There's typically three levels of ABM, or three, I suppose, types of ABM, and each one has its own, I suppose, fit depending on your business. The first one is what we call strategic ABM, and this is the most personalized version of ABM, whereby it targets accounts on a one-to-one basis. So our accounts are essentially receiving one-to-one communication directly in line with their needs. The second level is what we call scale ABM. And this is a one-to-few ABM strategy where target accounts are grouped into microsegments based on overlapping characteristics. And I suppose this enables us. This could be from a regional perspective, it could be from a industry perspective, it could be on a specific segment perspective. Lots of different characteristics we have to consider on how we might group them. Third level is programmatic ABM, or what we might better refer to as one-to-many ABM. And this strategy, I suppose, focuses on communications that are still very much personalized, but where we might rely on more automation to do so than in the other two versions. And we're targeting a wider group of people with this. So once we've decided on the type of ABM we're going to do, the next thing we have to consider is what's the criteria for selecting a potential target, be it an account or an opportunity or type of company. And with each strategy, I suppose there's a finite number of accounts that you can target at any given time. And your team needs to be able to figure out, who qualifies firstly as a target account. And secondly, how should those accounts be prioritized? So your ideal customer profiles are absolutely critically important when it comes to ABM. And what we want them to do is lay out the firmographic information that will indicate fit and guide our qualification process. So, while you may have multiple ideal customer personas or target segments for your overall marketing strategy, your ABM qualification will generally focus on accounts that have the most potential to perform well or convert maybe a higher sales revenue. So we have to consider, which accounts have we had the most success with in the past, maybe from a sales or an ongoing service perspective. What type of accounts would realize the most value from your product or service? Before you ever reach out to a potential opportunity or prospect, it's really, really important that we're familiar with who our organization's ideal customer profile is and buyer persona, as well as the seasonality, vocabulary, and industry speak of the prospects that we want to engage. So what might this process look like? How can we find this? And often we need to look beyond the decision maker and consider the buying committee as an entity. So we need to consider all of the people that are responsible for saying yes or no to your proposition and all of the influencers within that process. So I'm going to show you a real case example of how detailed we need to get from an ABM strategy perspective. We need to be specific as to the type of company we want to work with. We need to define the region in which we will target, and we need to consider all stakeholders in the decision-making process. So looking at, I suppose, a real customer case, this is a client of mine in the IT space, and they're targeting pharmaceutical manufacturers. So they are in the process of expansion into the Flanders region in Belgium. So Can you see what they've already done there? They didn't choose Belgium as a whole. They refined their market to the Flanders region first. And they did that because it's a well-supported life sciences region within Belgium. They didn't decide they were going into one huge region. They refined it down. And then they took a deeper dive on the customer targeting side of things. So these guys sell predominantly into the pharma sector. And a sweet spot customer for them is a pharma manufacturing plant. But there's lots of different types of pharmaceutical manufacturing plants out there. There's some that make tablets, the finished products, and there's some that make the raw materials that might go into the finished product. And then there's some that do both of these things and much more. But the point is, these guys didn't say that they wanted to target every pharma manufacturing company in the Flanders region. They segmented their customer, just as you can see on your screen now. Through research, they identified the specific companies that they felt were good targets that fit into their sweet spot customer focus. They named the company, they ranked them by tier. You know, for example, they were a tier 1 or a tier 2 pharma company. They mapped out the process that this potential customer uses into kind of 2 distinct areas that they knew they could offer most value within. And that was specifically biomanufacturing and capsule filling. And this is a critical piece of work because it essentially defines the problem you as a seller are going to solve for your customer. So a company in the biomanufacturing space, for example, will need to hear and visually see a very different type of message or value proposition than the customer in the capsule filling space might. And in developing this table, my client also looked at, you know, whether the target companies were existing customers. You know, as they were targeting multinationals, this made sense. They looked to see if they'd worked with plants in other regions. They also looked at whether or not they had an existing relationship with the company. Now, in most instances, they didn't, but they did consider things like, do we have a past relationship with any of their team? Have we worked with any of their team members in other plants? Have we worked with similar companies in close proximity to this target list of companies? You know, have they made any expansion announcements that would indicate they need to upgrade their IT? And distilling the customers to this level of detail, it allowed these guys to segment their target customers with much more certainty. So next, they needed then to take a deeper dive at who within these organizations that they'd identified had the pain points that they could solve. So because these guys offer an IT solution, as I mentioned, they defined the primary individuals within these companies that they needed to target as the 4 roles that you can see on your screen now. The global engineering director, the manufacturing plant engineering manager, the reliability engineer, and the global IT director. But I suppose, how did they decide that? How did they decide that this group of 4 would make up the buying committee in the companies that they wanted to target? You know, how did they know that this group would get together and make a decision on whether or not to implement their solution? So again, these are existing knowledge of the Irish market, but also across the other regions internationally that they operate in. They brought in the expertise of their sales and marketing teams, and they researched each target customer on an individual basis in LinkedIn Sales Navigator to enable them to understand the roles and responsibilities of each of the individuals. And finally, they spoke to existing contacts that were already operating in the region that they were targeting. And they asked lots of different questions that led them being able to categorize the individuals that they wanted to target into these 4 distinct roles. But the next thing they had to do was map out how these 4 individuals made decisions. So how was decision making made among this buying committee? So they needed to understand who the ultimate decision maker was, who influenced that decision maker. Were there roles in this this buying committee that exuded a higher level of influence than others. They needed to map all of this out to group the stakeholders in order to be able to interact with them on a personal level. And then following that, they developed a profile for each of the individuals on the buying committee. They developed a buyer persona. And the example you can see on screen at the moment is one for the manufacturing plant engineer. And developing this profile, it allows us to really get into the mindset of the individual that we're targeting and really, I suppose, understand the perspective of the person that we're selling to. And that's really key. It's approaching our ABM efforts from that buyer's perspective, not from what we think, or what we want to say or think we should say as sellers of something. Creating these buyer personas for each role, it gives us a much broader and greater understanding of our target customers, which in turn allows us to much more effectively market to them. And in terms of ABM, this process, it enables us to establish the criteria of what makes an initial target company. So, folks, the third step in laying the foundations for ABM is all about creating a content strategy and distribution plan. And how personalized your end communications with target accounts are will very much depend on the type of ABM you employ, whether it's one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many. The fact of the matter is, with all types of ABM, you can leverage content that's both generic and specific. So, for example, you might have generic guides on a particular solution that you offer and how it works. But this is content that can be a useful reference material for all types of target accounts. And, in addition to that, you might develop content that's tailored to your ABM microsegments that explains perhaps industry-specific pain points or benefits. And finally, you might have, I suppose, uber personalized content that specifically lays out how your solution will impact an individual company or an individual within a company. Your content strategy, it needs to connect throughout your sales funnel. So as you're planning, what to create, we need to consider what you need to generate interest initially to pull that target account into your funnel, and what you'll need to nurture projects throughout that sales process. And this content can take a variety of forms, from digital ads to downloadable checklists or fact sheets to even physical mail, believe it or not. And I suppose in addition to varying the personalization levels of the content itself, you can also have different levels of personalization in your distribution channels. So, for example, if you're leveraging an educational asset as part of your ABM strategy, you might promote it through a completely different digital channel, or you might present it customly on a call. And if you're using that same asset as part of a scale ABM strategy, you could send it in small batch emails with messaging that's extremely suited to the interests of the micro segment or the individual that you're targeting. In a one-to-many ABM strategy, that asset might be sent out to a larger group of accounts, where it has personalization tokens in it to adjust the messaging based on the requirements of that particular audience that you're targeting. So all of the content that you create and you distribute, it should work together as part of your overall content strategy, and make the most out of it, reuse it. And, based on how the accounts react, you should have plans in place for how you might follow up and continue to nurture them through the sales process. And I'll show you an example of that in a couple of moments. But one example from a content perspective is on screen now. It's from a client of mine called Avcom. And Avcom are targeting C-suite event managers within the corporate sector for this particular campaign. And you can see on screen how we adopted their content strategy in line with, I suppose, the principles of ABM. We commenced with an initial attention-grabbing post or a piece of content that linked to an informational page on their website. We're generating awareness, we're capturing attention. Next, we needed to generate interest, and we focused in more specifically on the corporate client segment here. We really ignited trust by, visually illustrating that these guys manage large-scale events, that are of a hugely technical nature. And this audience knows that it takes a huge amount of specialism and precision to run something of this nature. And the reference, it might be a little bit difficult to see on screen, but the reference in the image to Opel there brings this together really well to ignite that all-important trust among our audience. The next piece of content then focused on the consideration stage of the buyer journey. And it was the first introduction of a larger piece of research that Avcom undertook. So we needed to showcase our expertise here, broader than just technical production. So research was commissioned and used throughout our ABM campaigns at varying stages of the sales funnel. And in this consideration stage example, we very subtly indicated, I suppose, our thought leadership positioning, giving information or data that was relevant to our audience and something that will inform their future decision making. So the best month of the year to host events is in May, or so 29% of those surveyed said. So after we've used our content to capture that attention, ignite trust, to showcase our expertise, we close off this loop by offering useful content. And what we actually did in this instance was we offered the target audience the opportunity to pre-register to get a copy of the full report, the Future of Events report. So we were giving them content that was beneficial to them, and in return, they were engaging with us by giving us their contact details to ensure that we could continue to nurture them and bring them into our sales pipeline. And folks, to justify the resource investment that ABM requires, you need to be able to demonstrate that its performance exceeds that of your standard, I suppose, or your traditional marketing and sales strategy. So determining your KPIs and setting up a reporting system that can track how all of these metrics are performing is really, really important. And some common metrics that you might track might include engagement rates. It might include the average sale value. It might include the sales cycle length. It might be your win or your conversion rates, or your customer lifetime value, for example. Reporting on all of these, in addition to, I suppose, more tactical indicators, it'll help you identify the strengths and weaknesses of your ABM strategy, so we can continue to optimize it time and time again. And folks, before we close out this part of the session and bring Seamus in, I just want to take you through an example of what a very simple ABM strategy might look like within your organization. So let's assume, we've all done our research. We know the companies that we're going to target. We know the individuals within the companies that we're going to target. And we've prepared several forms of content that are going to resonate with this target segment. So in this example, we're implementing a one-to-many ABM strategy. So we're tailoring our message to suit a specific industry that we specialize in. And all of the activities we undertake is supported by both paid and organic social media to ensure we're building a consistent level of awareness in a soft touch manner, running in the background of our direct targeting ABM campaign. So what you can see on screen is, I suppose, the first action is approaching the contact or contacts that we're reaching out to. And in this example, we do this by email or perhaps LinkedIn InMail. And we give them the option to download an ebook that we've developed that addresses specific pain points of this particular audience. If the target downloads the email, our next action is to pick up the phone with the intention of setting up a face-to-face email. If they don't download the email, we continue to nurture them by following up with another email or perhaps LinkedIn message. And we target them with specific business cases that align, I suppose, that are again aligned and personalized to their pain points or needs. Now, depending on whether or not they engage with us, this content, we can either continue to nurture or again look to set up a one-to-one meeting. So folks, this is a relatively simple example, but it can show you the journey that ABM might take through your organization and the different, I suppose, steps involved based on what the account chooses or based on the direction that the account chooses to go down. So guys, before we finish up on this element of the session and invite Seamus into a Q&A, I want to summarize a couple of, I suppose, key benefits that an ABM strategy can offer companies that are seeking really to, I suppose, to enhance their marketing strategies. So firstly, ABM, it excels in building lasting relationships, and it does that by prioritizing personalization. So tailoring our marketing efforts to specific target accounts, it ensures a deeper connection and engagement, and it ultimately leads to a far stronger and more, I suppose, enduring partnership. Secondly, ABM has the potential to expedite the sales cycle, because by concentrating our efforts on key accounts and aligning our marketing strategies with the unique needs of those accounts, we can streamline the buying process, reducing the time it takes to convert leads into customers. Another, I suppose, clear benefit of ABM is it provides us with a more visual indication of return on investment. So when we focus specific accounts, we can measure and analyze the impact of our marketing efforts much more precisely, which leads us to being able to predict far more, I suppose, accurate ROI assessments. It also, a key benefit of ABM, in my perspective, is that it promotes very much close alignment between sales and marketing teams. And through collaboration and shared goals, these teams can work in tandem, ensuring a cohesive and integrated approach to targeting accounts and more so engaging key accounts. And I suppose lastly, ABM, it allows us to concentrate our resources on high quality leads. So by identifying and prioritizing accounts with the highest potential value for our business, we can optimize our efforts, resulting in much more efficient and effective use of resources. So in essence, ABM, it empowers us to work smarter and not harder in pursuit of our business growth. So folks, that is it from me in terms of an introduction to ABM. I hope you've gotten some good insights into the realm that we call ABM, and I think no better man to speak this today than Seamus Fahy, as I mentioned, from ICS Medical Devices. Seamus has first-hand experience of ABM, and I'm delighted he is here with us today to share his experience. So as I said earlier, please do put any questions you have for Seamus or myself into the chat, and we'll do our best to address them during the session. Hi Seamus, you're very welcome.
Hey Ciara, thanks for that.
Seamus, I suppose we'll start with a really basic question. Tell us a little bit about ICS Medical Devices.
Yeah, for sure. ICS, we're a CDMO, contract development manufacturing organization based out of Galway. As you alluded to earlier, we're very technology and engineering heavy. So we have a staff of about 100, of which over 50 are highly qualified engineers. Been on the go since 2019, and in our early years, we engaged with a market discovery fund via EI and the IMS crew in ABM and developing our overall marketing strategy. So that was about 20 or 21. And yeah, our market, our target, we're predominantly serving the early stage medtech type of companies in Ireland, Europe, which was a focus of our ABM, and a little bit in North America, but predominantly Ireland and the EU at this stage.
Thanks, Seamus. So, a relatively young company, 2019, entering your 5th year. Seamus, why did you decide that ABM was a good strategy for ICS?
Yeah, so from our perspective, we needed, we were doing quite well locally here in Ireland, of course. But from our business development and our overall strategy, we knew we needed to get international, and we were getting some traction in some areas, but not sufficiently. And it was around the same time we had some headwinds called COVID and others that limited our ability to be out and about and meeting people. So yeah, it was a strategy that probably came along at the right place and the right time. We were also small, much smaller then than we are now, and we just did not have the expertise. We were all technical guys. We didn't have that sales and marketing heads or hats in our organization to coordinate and organize it. So for a lot of reasons, it lined up as a good solution for us to trial and pilot, and that initial pilot proved very successful for us, and then we rolled it out again and again and again over the next 18 months, targeting slightly different geographies in the European regions. Yeah, it filled its purpose at that time.
And Seamus, you touched on something really important there. You said again and again, and we rolled it out again and again and again. Tell us a little bit about that process. So we'll get into kind of investments and things in a couple of moments, but ABM is a deeper investment than what a traditional marketing strategy might be. But the benefit of it is that you can very much define your sales process around it and lift that approach and bring it with you. Was that your experience?
For sure. And again, we did the pilot and we targeted a geography, and we got a return out of that, but we also learned an awful lot out of that, and it gave us enough confidence to go again, but go better. And so our second cycle, in terms of our content we put in there, in terms of how we went through the process, in terms of the targets and the screening and what we were looking for and not looking for, all that improved. So when we did it a second time, and we targeted a second geography the second time, it was a much improved process. So, and as I said, we went through it again and again and again, and where today, this year, we mightn't be doing an ABM under the guise of an ABM, but when we're out there looking at people, we have those that ABM process in mind. We're targeting the key stakeholders. Who do we need to be talking to them? What do we need to be talking to them about? It's almost become part of our everyday process and language, and thought processes in terms of how we engage with, particularly with new customers and new leads.
So it's been ingrained into the business, Seamus.
I think so. Yeah. At least for me personally, for sure, and into our teams, and as we've grown, it's been adopted by people, the new people that have come into us via us, I guess.
Say that last bit again, Seamus. Sorry, via.
Yeah. So as new people have joined our organization, they've adopted the processes and in terms of how they engage with the new leads that come into our business.
Sure. And Seamus, I suppose there's a lot of research to consider at the start of an ABM process, and investing that time in figuring out, who do we specifically want to target? What region are we going to go into? What characteristics should these companies and individuals have? How labor intensive did you find that? And are you now in a position where your team are taking on that work in-house themselves?
Yeah. So, how labor intensive? I wouldn't call it labor intensive because it was a must. We had to sell and we had to find new targets and new geographies. So, there was work involved, and it was new work for us, but I wouldn't call it intensive. In that we had to go and get this done and find our leads and bring them in and create revenues from them. And then, yeah, in terms of our teams internally, as I said, yeah, it's become a process or a thought process, or in terms of how we operate. So again, uh, we see somebody new, or somebody new comes across our books, we're asking the same questions we asked 4 or 5 years ago when we started ABM. And it's not just me that's asking it; it's the team. So we've it's been absorbed into ICS as such.
So benefits outside of revenue are, I suppose, a consistent approach to sales and a consistent approach as to how you would engage with prospects.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, some of these opportunities became direct revenue via that lead, and there's other benefits, like we've built up a network. We've a database of people, and we see those people moving around, so that expands our network, and that expands, that gives us the opportunity for new leads. So I think there's been multiple benefits for us. We even got our name out there, so it was marketing in a way. So, we knocked on a lot of doors, or a lot of phone lines at the time, and we introduced ICS, and they may or may not have proceeded with us in those instances, but our name was out there. So it was a pretty good direct marketing in an era when we couldn't get out to trade shows and so forth and do direct marketing. So so we got our name out there, to the right people, and they may not all have engaged with us directly, but seeds are sown for future opportunities.
Yes, yes, James. So a couple of questions in the chat, and we'll chat more in a second. But Seamus, Pierre is asking, what would be the typical size of an ABM cohort? So, for example, how many companies would you target at any specific time?
Yeah, so what did we do? Rightly or wrongly, I'm not so sure, but like we would have had maybe 10 or 15 leads that we would have been targeting in each instance. And so we would have mined, and we would have come up with 10 or 15, and we wouldn't have probably deliberately not gone beyond that. They may or may not have been there, but we didn't go beyond that. And we would have prioritized them, and then proceeded to target them. But yeah, it's in the region about 10 to 15 in our particular instance, and our instance not being a huge team to maybe deal with too many more.
And I think that's an important point. The number very much depends on the resources you have available. I don't believe there's a right number or a wrong number, but it's very much down to your business resources and what you can essentially dedicate to this. Because each of the different, I suppose, levels or types of ABM would suggest that, salespeople can manage a certain amount of them. So it very much depends on your individual companies. Seamus, another question. I think we've answered this. Did you do the research yourself, or did you use third parties?
Yeah, we use third parties for sure. We worked obviously with Ollie Mason, and very, very closely. And so, like when you talk about the labor intensiveness, in fairness to the IMS, they did a lot of that heavy lifting and driving for us. But it would have always come back to us, because at the end of the day, we were the subject matter experts. So in terms of, is this guy worth talking to, or this guy not worth talking to? We're in the industry. We know the products. We know their products, what they're trying to, what they're trying to do or not to do, and whether that's in our sweet spot or not. So it was very collaborative. Again, I think it was very useful that we were able to work with an IMS at that time, and they were able to do a lot. Again, they did the heavy lifting for us, but they also brought that marketing skill in terms of the targeting and those initial lead phone calls and that initial content in be it mail or be it phone call, because is a skill that engineers, or in our instance, all of us engineers, we didn't necessarily have, or were too comfortable or confident in doing.
Yeah, no, I get it, Seamus, I get it. And I suppose again, it comes back to the framework that I suppose is initially set up from a research perspective. So quite often we would see that companies would use a third party provider for their initial, or their, let's say, their pilot ABM campaign. And just like what Seamus and the team have done, they've taken those learnings and they've embedded them into the sales process from there. That becomes more manageable the more it's rolled out over time, if you like. Seamus, we have another question here from Emma. Emma is saying, you mentioned new team members adopt and absorb your ABM strategy. How do you communicate and roll out your ABM process to new team members to ensure the process is consistent as you scale?
Yeah, so for all, obviously sales is hugely important, and all our sales are project sales at this moment. So we have to refill our hopper on a very regular basis. So sales is huge for us, and it's like, as a management team, we meet at least 2 or 3 times a week. So yeah, and it's just being consistent from my perspective, and then my leadership team, my support team, have adopted and picked it up and ensured that, yeah, it's just consistency and repeating and repeating, rinse and repeat and repeat and repeat. Yeah, so but it's so important to us. We have to be, and yeah, so I think in our instance, it just has to be this way. Otherwise, yeah, we might not get the return.
And Seamus, you're touching off a question that Pierre has asked here in terms of who's driving the ABM process. And I think it's aligned to Emma's question as well. Seamus referenced the leadership team and the management team there. From an ABM perspective, it's very, very important that we have our senior team driving it and leading it. It's because it's a much more technical, higher value sale than what we might typically adopt. So, you know, who's driving the ABM process? I would say, Seamus, and correct me if I'm wrong in your instance, but I would say the management team supported by your sales and marketing teams.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we don't have a business without sales, so it's the most important. It's one of our most important functions. So, yeah, and yeah, so it's a key leadership. Even this on our own, and this, and we're successful at this. Yeah, and these tools are, in our instance, these tools are massive enablers for us to be successful.
Yeah, Seamus, we've loads of questions here. Barry from Rent a Recruiter is wondering how long or big a piece of work is involved in understanding what customers to target with ABM. Do you want me to jump in there, Seamus?
Yeah, take it. Go for it.
So Barry, that depends. That depends on your industry. And again, it goes back to what we said. It very much depends on the availability of resources that you have in-house. I would suggest a typical research project would be probably no less than 8 weeks in terms of identifying a bank of customers to target, in terms of profiling them, in terms of you know, perhaps bringing them to your management team, and I suppose developing a roadmap and list of customers that we're going to target. But the research piece is only the first bit, and the real work starts when we get into actually reaching out and connecting with these people. So perhaps 6 to 8 weeks for an initial piece of research. And then after that, you're very much into targeting. Seamus, would you agree with?
Yes, yeah, and no, for sure. You research, and there's a whole learning curve that maybe the first pass is 6 or 8 weeks, and the second pass, if you do a second pass, could be significantly quicker once everyone's on point in terms of what you're looking for, and again what you're not looking for. But yeah, that as you're figuring things out, yeah, those early stages, you're figuring things out. Give it the time and the respect it deserves.
Exactly. And guys, I suppose one thing to mention as well, you know, ABM, and it's a bit marketing, it's never one and done. We're constantly trying to continuously improve this. So we might do a bank of research today and identify 50 target accounts. The criteria, the learnings that we would take from maybe perhaps running an initial ABM campaign would very much steer us in the direction of optimizing that campaign again in the future. So, optimizing the research that we need to do in the future. So it's very much a continuous improvement process. I would suggest. Noel is wondering, is the process of ABM manual or can it be automated with the likes of Salesforce? Seamus, did you guys use any CRM tools?
Yeah, so we would have used a CRM tool, we would use Zoho, but only not for doing anything overly active or
Complicated.
or just a database more so. And in our instance, I think it needs to be manual, because you need this. I touch on the technical subject matter experts to conclude whether something's worth targeting or not worth targeting and prioritizing. I'm not sure that can be done automatically.
Yeah, and I suppose in your instance, it's an extremely technical sale. It's an educational sale, essentially.
Yeah.
And look, there's 100 different types of MarTech out there that can be used to automate ABM. I mean, in the past, we've used HubSpot, we have integrated with Salesforce, we have, there's a huge amount of different tools that are out there. But again, it depends on, I suppose, your maturity as an organization and what you're willing to invest into the process. But absolutely, Seamus and the guys use Zoho as their CRM system. You know, that could even be, you know, expanded out a little bit further, that there's a certain amount of automated communication aligned onto it, depending on what stage Seamus and the team might indicate a specific opportunity is at. Ideally, that's where we want to go, but there's foundations that are critically important first to get right. And of course, I suppose, in terms of measurement, Google Analytics, hugely important, and making sure that the correct tracking is aligned to each of the campaigns as well. That is it, I think, from questions in the chat, guys. Sorry, one more here from Lauren. We might just take it. I'm conscious of time. Lauren is wondering, have your ABM efforts been targeted only at your existing database, or have you engaged cold contacts? And if so, what has your success been?
Yeah, so when we did ABM, it was exclusively a cold people we did not know. So the people we knew and were up and running. So yeah, from our perspective, we needed new people, new contacts, and new opportunities. So everything we did was essentially a cold call. And again, that was pretty much the heavy lifting. A lot of that work was done by IMS in our instance, on the number of passes we did.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, while ABM is great for continuing to nurture existing clients, it's also a fantastic opportunity to position yourselves among clients that you don't know, or potential customers that you don't know. I think absolutely, I would be saying that is the strategy to go with. So guys, I'm just going to pull up one final screen here before we finish. Can you see my screen? I'm conscious that we are just on time. I want to thank you all for your time today. I hope you have gotten some good insights and practical tips. A very special thanks to Seamus for his time and for joining us today, and also to EI for hosting this event. You can see a link on screen at the moment. Please do visit the EI website for any more information on their huge range of sales and marketing supports for the Market Research Centre, for upcoming events or webinar registrations. It is a treasure trove of information, so please do check it out. And thank you all for your time today. I genuinely appreciate it, and I hope we have given you some food for thought. And thank you all for being so active in the chat. It was fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kara.
Thanks, Seamus.